It was an ordinary afternoon. Manny Pacquiao, the world-famous boxer and respected senator, decided to enjoy some quiet family time. Whether walking through a nearby park, sitting down at a small restaurant, or strolling alongside his wife and kids, Manny looked relaxed and approachable, just like any other man spending time with his loved ones. But this calm moment was about to take an unexpected turn. As Manny and his family moved along, a police officer nearby noticed him. Instead of recognizing the senator or simply letting him be, the officer immediately made a snap judgment based solely on Manny's appearance. Without any clear reason, the officer approached with a sharp, suspicious glare. "What are you doing here?" the officer demanded abruptly. "Who do you think you are?" Manny, surprised but composed, responded politely, "I'm just spending time with my family." But the officer was not interested in a friendly answer. His tone grew colder, his questions more aggressive. "Do you have any ID on you? Where are you from? What's your business here?" The officer pressed, leaning in as if expecting Manny to crack. The surrounding crowd began to notice the confrontation. People's eyes shifted, some pulling out their phones, sensing something was wrong. Manny's family looked uncomfortable but stayed silent, trusting Manny to handle the situation. Manny kept his cool. He answered calmly, never raising his voice or showing anger. Yet the officer's attitude remained harsh, as if he doubted Manny's right to be there. What Manny did next shocked everyone standing there, whispered someone from the crowd, already sensing that this wasn't going to be an ordinary encounter. This was just the beginning. The story unfolding before the witnesses would soon reveal not only the courage and dignity of Manny Pacquiao, but also expose the ugly reality of racial profiling and abuse of power. The police officer's aggressive tone didn't soften. In fact, it grew sharper and more hostile with every passing second. Manny Pacquiao, despite being a globally respected figure and senator, was being treated like a suspect simply because of how he looked. The crowd, sensing the tension, began to hold their breath. "ID, now." The officer's voice was sharp, demanding, like a judge passing down a sentence. "What are you hiding?" Manny reached into his pocket and pulled out his identification. Without a hint of frustration, he said, "Here you go, officer." But the cop barely glanced at the ID, his suspicion far from satisfied. "This doesn't explain why you're here," he snapped. "Where are you really from? What's your business?" Around them, bystanders had started to take notice. Phones were quietly lifted, recording the scene as it unfolded. Some whispered to each other, others exchanged uncomfortable looks. A few young people murmured, "This isn't right," but no one wanted to step forward, at least not yet. Manny kept his composure. He understood the power of patience in moments like this. Raising his voice or showing anger would only escalate the situation. Instead, he responded clearly and respectfully. "I am here with my family, enjoying the day. There is no reason for suspicion," Manny said, his voice steady and calm. But the officer was not convinced. His eyes narrowed, his body language radiating distrust and hostility. "You're acting like you don't belong here," he said, stepping closer. Manny took a subtle step back, keeping his family safely behind him, yet his posture remained confident, dignified. "I do belong," Manny said quietly but firmly. "Everyone has the right to be here without fear of being harassed." The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Some onlookers began to film the confrontation openly now, not wanting to miss a moment of what was becoming a clear case of racial profiling. The air buzzed with tension. Suddenly, the officer's tone shifted to something darker. "If you don't cooperate, this could get worse for you," he warned, his voice low and threatening. Manny's wife tugged gently on his sleeve, concern etched across her face. "Please, Manny, let's just go," she whispered. His children clung quietly to her side, eyes wide with worry. But Manny stood firm. He knew this was about more than just one encounter. It was a moment to stand up for respect and dignity, not only for himself, but for anyone who might face similar treatment. The officer took a step back, realizing the crowd was watching closely now. His aggressive approach had drawn attention, and the balance of power began to shift. Bystanders began whispering to each other, some shouting softly, "Let him be," or "This isn't right." Manny looked around at the growing crowd, then back at the officer. His calmness seemed to frustrate the cop even more. "What do you want from me?" Manny asked, quietly but clearly. The officer's response was not an answer but an attempt to intimidate. "You're lucky this isn't a worse situation," he said, voice thick with anger. Yet Manny refused to back down. His calm presence spoke volumes. Here was a man who had faced countless battles in the ring and in politics, now facing a different kind of fight, one for justice and human dignity. As the minutes passed, more and more people pulled out their phones, recording every word, every gesture. Some live-streamed, sharing the unfolding drama with friends and followers online. The growing digital audience would soon turn this incident from a local confrontation into a viral story seen by millions. Engagement prompt. Have you ever seen someone abused by authority? Comment below where you're watching this from. What city or country? The tension hung in the air. Manny remained the picture of composure, refusing to let the officer's hostility provoke him into anger or rash action. His respectfulness only highlighted the cop's aggressive, unfair behavior. At one point, a few brave bystanders stepped closer, asking the officer calmly if there was any real reason for the suspicion. The officer brushed them off, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. The scene was unfolding exactly as Manny expected, not because he wanted confrontation, but because he knew that sometimes standing firm in the face of injustice was the only way to make change. The crowd was silently rooting for Manny, even if they couldn't voice it aloud. Phones continued to record. Whispers turned into quiet murmurs of support. Suddenly, the officer barked, "Move along!" as if trying to regain control. But Manny shook his head slowly, eyes steady. No one should be moved along just because of how they look. The crowd's energy shifted. More people began to speak up softly. A few voices said, "Enough." The line between authority and accountability was starting to blur in that small public space. What would happen next? How would Manny handle the mounting hostility? The crowd was waiting, phones poised, ready to capture the next move. The officer's frustration was now obvious. His glare hardened and his voice grew louder, colder. What had started as a series of pointed questions was now edging dangerously close to threats. The calm patience Manny had shown so far was beginning to be tested. "You think you can just walk around here without answering properly?" the officer barked. "I'm telling you, if you don't cooperate, there will be consequences." Manny's wife reached out and gently touched his arm, her eyes full of worry. "Manny, please. Let's just leave. It's not worth it," she pleaded softly. Their children clung close, sensing the tension and growing uneasy. But Manny's jaw tightened slightly and he looked around at the growing crowd. The people watching were no longer just passive onlookers. Many were recording on their phones, whispering to each other, and some were beginning to murmur words of encouragement. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. "I appreciate your concern," Manny replied quietly, "but sometimes standing up is necessary, especially when it's about dignity and respect." The officer stepped forward again, this time less cautious. "You're making this difficult," he said sharply. "I could arrest you for disturbing the peace." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Some bystanders exchanged worried glances. Others whispered, "Is he really going to arrest him? For what?" Manny took a deep breath and stayed calm, his eyes never leaving the officers. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just here with my family, like anyone else." Despite the growing tension, Manny remained composed, knowing that his calm demeanor was a powerful counter to the officer's aggression. Yet inside he felt the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about one encounter. It was a symbol of a much larger problem that many faced daily. The officer, feeling his authority challenged in front of the crowd, tried to assert control by raising his voice even more. "Listen, if you don't show me some respect, this is going to get ugly. Now, I want your ID again." and no more talking back. At that moment, a fellow officer arrived on the scene, alerted by the gathering crowd. He quickly took in the situation, the tense standoff, the crowd's attention, and the man calmly addressing the aggressive cop. The new officer approached calmly and addressed his colleague quietly. "You might want to reconsider your approach here." The aggressive officer's shoulders sagged slightly. The arrival of another law enforcement presence seemed to cool his temper, but the damage was done. The crowd's eyes were on him, and Manny's message had clearly taken hold. Manny took a deep breath and spoke again, this time to the crowd, as much as to the officers. "We all deserve to be treated with respect. That's not just a wish, it's a right." The atmosphere shifted. The bystanders cheered softly, some raising their phones higher to capture this moment of dignity, overcoming hostility. The officer, now clearly losing control, muttered under his breath and stepped back. His earlier threats had lost their power. Manny's quiet strength had silenced the crowd, humbled the cop, and turned the tide of the confrontation. As the situation began to de-escalate, the crowd's admiration for Manny was palpable. They witnessed more than just a man standing his ground. They saw the embodiment of integrity, courage, and justice. The arrival of the second officer seemed to mark a turning point. The tense atmosphere was thick, but the fresh presence brought a new layer of attention and authority to the scene. As the crowd watched intently, someone in the gathering, maybe a bystander or one of the officers, finally made the confirmation known aloud. "That's Manny Pacquiao, the world champion boxer and senator." The words rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Phones were raised higher, and the whispers grew louder. "It's really him. I can't believe the cop didn't know. How could he not recognize Manny?" For the officer who had been harassing Manny, the revelation hit hard. His eyes widened, and a visible flush spread across his face. The hard edge of his demeanor softened for a moment, replaced by a mixture of embarrassment and shame. The crowd's eyes bore down on him, waiting to see how he would respond. Some people in the crowd started to cheer softly, their voices rising in admiration for Manny's dignity and bravery. Others shook their heads in disbelief at the officer's ignorance and prejudice. The officer who had arrived second stepped forward, addressing his colleague quietly but firmly. "You've made a mistake here. We all serve to protect, not to intimidate or profile." The first officer's shoulders slumped. His anger and bravado drained away as the weight of the situation settled on him. It was clear he was humbled, not just by Manny's presence, but by the undeniable truth that his actions were wrong. Manny himself remained calm and composed. He didn't raise his voice or gloat over the situation. Instead, he used this moment to deliver a message that transcended the personal confrontation. "Respect and equality are not privileges," Manny said clearly. "They are rights that belong to everyone, regardless of background or appearance." His voice was steady, and the crowd listened intently, hanging on every word. "This incident," Manny continued, "is a reminder that we must all stand against unfair judgment and abuse of power. It's about more than me. It's about every person who faces discrimination." The crowd erupted into applause, a wave of support and agreement washing over the gathering. Phones captured Manny's humble yet powerful message, and social media notifications began to flood as live streams and videos went viral. Many people in the crowd approached Manny, offering words of encouragement and thanks for his courage. Meanwhile, the once aggressive officer was left standing quietly, the weight of his actions clear for all to see. Several bystanders called for accountability, reminding the officers present and the wider community that such behavior cannot be tolerated. Engagement prompt. Have you ever witnessed someone's courage turn the tide? Share your story below. Manny's family gathered around him, their faces reflecting pride and relief. The ordeal had been difficult, but Manny's strength had transformed a moment of injustice into a lesson of dignity and respect. As the scene slowly dispersed, the conversation among onlookers was filled with admiration for Manny. and a renewed determination to challenge discrimination wherever it exists. This incident would not be forgotten. It was shared widely, becoming a symbol of standing up against prejudice with grace and courage. And for Manny Pacquiao, it was a reaffirmation of his lifelong commitment, not only to his sport and his country, but to the values of justice and equality that define true leadership. The video footage of the confrontation quickly spread across social media platforms. Millions of viewers worldwide watched as Manny Pacquiao faced a racist cop's harassment with calm dignity and unwavering courage. What started as a tense moment in a public space became a powerful symbol of standing up against injustice. Comments poured in from all corners, people praising Manny's restraint, his strength, and his message of respect. Many shared similar stories of profiling and abuse, thanking Manny for giving voice to a struggle that too many face in silence. News outlets picked up the story. Headlines celebrated Manny not just as a boxing legend and politician, but as a man who embodies integrity and justice. The incident sparked widespread conversations about racial profiling, abuse of power, and the importance of treating everyone with fairness. Meanwhile, the police department launched an internal investigation into the officer's conduct. The evidence was clear. The officer had acted on prejudice, misusing his authority to intimidate an innocent man. Faced with mounting public pressure and undeniable proof, the department suspended the officer pending further action. The decision sent a strong message that discriminatory behavior would not be tolerated. But for Manny, the real victory was deeper than any official reprimand. It was in the thousands of people inspired by his example, empowered to stand up against unfair treatment in their own lives. In interviews following the incident, Manny emphasized humility and unity. "I am grateful for the support," he said. "But this is not about me. It is about the principle that no one should be judged by how they look or where they come from. Respect and dignity belong to everyone." He encouraged people to speak out against injustice peacefully and to treat each other with kindness and understanding. The viral video became a teaching moment, used in schools, community groups, and social media discussions to highlight the real-life impact of prejudice and the power of standing firm with grace. Manny's family stood by him, proud of his strength and resolve throughout the ordeal. Their shared experience deepened their commitment to advocating for fairness and equality. As the story settled into public consciousness, it sparked initiatives focused on police accountability and community relations. Activists cited Manny's example as a call to action. Through it all, Manny remained humble, never seeking the spotlight, but willing to use his voice for good. The message was clear. Dignity and respect are not earned by fame or status. They are basic human rights. Final call to action. If you believe no one should be judged by appearance, type respect in the comments below. Share this story, subscribe for more inspiring stories, and join the movement for fairness and equality everywhere.